I think the Bible's not scientific. What specifically do you take issue with in the Bible, as far as not being scientific?
Well, I don't care that it's not scientific. I mean, neither are the plays of Julius Caesar, but there are people that pretend it is. That's why I have it up there.
Like
There are
what?
people
What's
there are charlatans that hijack science and say that the Bible conforms or confirms scientific ideas, and that's just really stupid.
like what idea does it disagree with science?
Well, the Earth definitely wasn't created in 6 days. Adam and Eve never existed. Miracles, we have no good evidence that miracles happen. Blood is physically impossible. If we can call archaeology a science, then the the Exodus never happened. Moses wasn't even a person. Oh, what else? That's probably it.
So okay, you said Moses.
Never
Moses
existed.
wasn't a person.
Yeah.
That's a crazy statement. Okay,
There's absolutely no evidence to back up a single thing that happens in the Exodus story, including the existence of Israelites in Egypt. They never lived there.
well, see, the thing is that I wouldn't necessarily call the Bible a scientific document. It is a pretty accurate historical reference.
Oh, I don't
If
agree with
you
that either.
if you've actually done like anything, like if you went to the Museum of Natural History in Los Angeles,
I have been there.
and a lot of their places, they kind of backdrop a lot of biblical figures throughout the
What?
Bible, throughout the Israelites' history. Like so, for example, the Assyrians,
I've
right?
been to that museum. There were no biblical things there.
No, but I'm saying like if you there, there were some that have referenced the Bible, and then are biblical facts or biblical like historical facts, and then also some of the cultures that are mentioned in the Bible around the Israelites' time were there. So like the Assyrians, um, there's a couple other cultures that got wiped out because throughout history there are civilizations that just don't exist anymore that just never made it past a certain point. Like for example, when what's his name, the Mongol dude Genghis Khan, like he wiped out like entire cultures from the existence. That kind of happened too with the Syrians, and even the Israelites had something to do with that entire civilization.
What's the argument here? We're just like
So
saying things.
my argument is that, well, is that when it comes to the Israelites, and the history of them as a people, it's fairly accurate. I'm just saying that's my
The
point.
Exodus never happened, so I mean, throw that out. Most archaeologists, or I don't want to say archaeologists, but the people that have studied biblical archaeology to the extent they can have very, very little data that suggests King David existed either. So, I mean, those are
But
two fairly important things. Sodom and Gomorrah, those weren't places.
okay, but that's just because they haven't been discovered. But that doesn't mean they didn't exist. The lack of archaeological artifacts from a place doesn't mean that the place never existed. That's not a good
Fair
argument,
enough. We found Troy long after
right?
people
And
didn't
then
think it existed. So let me
like
say instead we have no evidence that
so like
those
like
places exist.
for
But there's
example, archaeologists
an
believe
old
that.
book is not a good reason to.
But like for example, archaeologists believed that the oldest civilization was it like 9,000 years ago, and then in Turkey or the I'm not sure
Yeah,
it was like in the
Göbekli
Joe Rogan
Tepe, it's in
podcast,
Turkey.
huh?
Göbekli Tepe was in Turkey.
But it's okay. Let's go back to Tepe, the new one they found. I think That's 11. It was like 11,000 years ago. So it's like so
Yeah.
even if you try to go for the latest archaeological standpoint, even they could be wrong. So like you know what I'm saying that your argument is not it's not really firm. You know what I'm saying? Just saying that I don't know that this place existed. That means it can't be real or it didn't happen. That's not a good argument
We
because
shouldn't.
things are
A
lost in
poor
history.
argument for its existence is an old book full of nonsense that says it existed. The lack of evidence is very good reason to be uh, skeptical of
Skeptical?
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe skepticism, but to say it doesn't, and I think the Bible is a fairly reliable historical document. Especially
I really
when it
disagree with
comes to the
that.
point from the era of Israelite as a nation forward. You can disagree with the Noah's flood and everything before that, and even the recent history after that. Sure, you can disagree with that, but the establishment of Israelite as a nation, it's pretty accurate. You can you can track through history the existence of the Jewish people. Like the Jewish they were captured by the Romans. That did happen.
You mean like
Yeah, so like Jerusalem,
which one are you talking about when they like had that last stand on that fortified hill?
like in the days of Jesus.
Yeah.
Before then,
Right before he
Babylon.
was born. Yeah, there was a
Yeah, in
huge
Babylon,
uprising. Yeah.
they were subjugated by Babylon. That's a fact. There were Jewish people in Babylon. Like
Yeah,
so, I'm saying,
there's good evidence to believe that, yeah.
yeah. So there's like lots of things. There's lots of evidence to believe that documents are good historical documents. So what I'm saying, like you try to discredit the Bible as a reference for historical facts is crazy. Actually, like it's
Crazy.
preponderance. Yeah, it's crazy. It's a little crazy. Like it's a little too far. I understand. Like I'm not saying like it's wrong to be skeptical, but I'm just saying like to discredit it entirely as a historical document is bonkers.
There are things in the Bible that are true, but on balance, I would say it's a very poor history book.
Nah, that's that. Yeah, I'm going to say that's not true. That's not true. Historians refer to the Bible, for for a lot of things.
For geographical things, they're like, okay, there's this place that's mentioned, and it's this small village next to this place, and turns out it's there, but that doesn't mean therefore
Okay, I mean,
Jesus walked on water. That part. It's like, so he did that. I used to know the name of where that takes place. That's a real place, but does that in any way support the idea of that happening? No. No more than J.K. Rowling talks about this place called London, which is a real place. Does that support the idea that there's actual wizardry going about? No.
okay, fair point, but that has nothing to do with the Bible as a historical document. Like because the Bible actually it recounts things that actually happened. So,
Like
like
what?
for like like example, the persecution of Christians, everyday Christians. It talks about
That's not talked about in the Bible.
yes, it is. The Apostle Paul was stoned several times, imprisoned. He was thrown out of the city. It talks
But he
about
wasn't even a Christian.
the Apostle Paul.
Yeah, they were Jews.
Paul
Christianity
wasn't.
didn't
Paul
become a
wasn't
thing
Christian.
until a few
Paul wasn't
centuries after
Christian.
Jesus died.
This is where I say your ignorance is showing. Apostle Paul was probably one of the most prominent Christians. He wrote several books of the Bible what we're talking about. I mean,
I'm aware of that.
his persecution and journey was extremely well documented. Extremely well documented. Yeah, he established the congregation in so many
Yes,
places.
and he was Jewish. Jesus was Jewish. All of his apostles were Jewish. They never at one point got together and be like, we are no longer Jews. We are something else entirely. That was done many,
They
many,
refer to
many,
themselves
many
as first century
decades later.
Christians. They refer to themselves as Christians. And
Followers of
Christians,
Christ,
hold on,
but
hold
they
on,
wouldn't have
because
called
hold on,
themselves
because
Christians.
you do realize that the Apostle Paul he wrote a book condemning Peter, who was also apostle, for only sitting with Jews and not including the Gentiles believers. So you understand that it wasn't just Jewish; it was Gentile in Jesus Christ.
Yes, they believed he was the Messiah, which was a Jewish idea.
Yes, they believed that Jesus was God's son, right? And that Jesus
There's
died
no
on.
evidence that Paul thought that,
Bro, no, he wrote the
that wrote
Bible.
the Gospels, except for perhaps John.
That's a lie, and that shows your
It's not a
ignorance.
lie because we
So
know
how do
that
you,
the
so
Gospels
what
were edited
so when the
to
who wrote First Corinthians?
explicitly weave
Who
that
wrote First
narrative.
Corinthians? Who
Things
wrote
like the
First Corinthians?
Johannine comma were added centuries after the Gospels were written.
Who wrote the First Corinthians?
Probably Paul. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
What was the First Corinthians? What was that?
I don't know off the top of my head.
It was a letter to the Christian congregation in Corinthia.
Right? The letters of Paul. Yeah.
Exactly. So you're trying to say that that first of all, Paul didn't believe in Jesus is crazy, right? Because his
I
whole
never said that. When did I say that?
you just
Quote
said
me.
I don't believe that Paul believed in Jesus. You just said that.
No, I did not say that.
So what'd you
I
say?
said he was Jewish, which he was.
Okay, but you understand that
I said that there's no direct
Jesus
evidence
was
that any
killed
of
by
those
Jews?
people thought Jesus was God.
Do you agree that Jesus was killed by Jews? Of course.
Executed by the Roman Empire. The Jews just handed him over.
Right, right. So you understand that there was a
So he wasn't killed by
fundamental-
Jews. That's a very raving
Okay,
anti-Semitic
if
talking
you read
point.
this, if you read the story, Pontius Pilate asked the Jews who did they want to be executed, Barnabas or Jesus, and they
Yes,
chose
whoever
Barnabas.
wrote the Gospel of John was appeasing a Roman audience. That's why the Gospel of John is completely different from the other Gospels. And it's a raving anti-Semitic gospel if you really read into it. Because the Jews say, we have no king but Caesar. The Jews had been living in that area, which they firmly believed was given to them by God, that no person could possibly have ownership of it. They
said we
recognized
have no
no
God but
master, no
Caesar?
king
What
except the
scripture is
one
that?
true
What scripture is
God.
that?
The idea that the high priests would have said we have no king but Caesar is completely, it's so unbelievably
Quote that
antithetical
scripture for me,
to
sir.
actual Jewish beliefs.
Quote that scripture for me, sir.
We have no king but Caesar?
Yeah.
John 19, verse 15.
Oh, he said, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And then he said, "We have no king but Caesar." Yeah. Okay. Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. Because he asked him if you were the king of the Jews. But see that's the thing. That's the thing. The Messiah was supposed to rule in heaven, right? He's supposed to be the king.
No,
you know?
he's supposed to rule on earth. Nothing in the Old Testament says that a new kingdom will be ushered in heaven. It will be ushered in on earth. And everybody, all people
then
around
why
the
did
world
Jesus-
will live in
so then
harmony,
why did
and that
Jesus
didn't
say,
happen.
"As it is in heaven, also be done on earth"? Why is that a scripture? As it is in heaven, also done on earth.
I am just telling you what professional biblical scholars who know
listen,
the Old Testament better
this
than
is-
you or me have said.
No, this is what I'm saying, because I'm actually well versed in biblical scholars. I'm actually well versed in Old Testament and the New Testament and the biblical history. Like, I'm actually quite knowledgeable on this subject. And what I'm trying to tell you, is that a lot of your knowledge is wrong. You know what I'm saying? It's just flat out wrong. So I understand. I understand that you don't have to, and everybody's an expert on everything. But I'm just saying, like, so there's just some things when you come to the Bible, when you want to make these kind of grandiose statements, that you kind of should refrain when you don't have the full knowledge of what you're talking about, right? Like, so the thing of the fact that there wasn't a distinction between the first day Christians and Jewish people, right? That there was a very clear distinction, right? They make that clear distinction because there were some Roman soldiers who left the service and joined and became Christians.
Where do you get that information from?
From the Bible.
Where?
Let me see. Let's see. Also, Apollo. Who? Hold on. Let me 1 second. Hold on.
One Mississippi.
Okay, so a man named Cephas, he was in the military. Let me try to find the scripture for you.
How do you spell his name?
Um, you said Cephas. No, that's the wrong one. That's Peter.
Okay.
I think it's US.
Cephas.
Yeah, something like that.
No, this is
Roman
just telling me this is another name for Peter.
Roman soldier, Christian. Let's see. Caiaphas. How do you spell it?
Caiaphas? Are you asking me how to spell Caiaphas? You're the one looking
No,
up the
I'm asking
resource.
I'm asking my mom.
Oh, okay.
Caiaphas. Uh, no, it's not him.
Are you talking about one of the people that was there at his crucifixion that said, "Surely this man was the Son of God"?
No, there's this. I'm trying. I'm hard to find it. Is this specific scripture?
Cornelius?
Is it Cornelius?
Acts 10, verse 2. He became baptized and became a follower of Christ after Peter visited him.
Yeah. I said he was a centurion.
Okay.
Um,
Ooh, he was a
yeah,
centaur. That's cool.
yeah. So yeah. There's like
Okay.
Gentiles, people who have
So
nothing to do with. Yeah.
so the book of Acts says that. For what reason do we have to believe it happened other than that?
Well, I mean, it's just like how you would believe. I mean, I don't know because it's not like this guy was in any particular point in history, right? It's just like you would read about like if you read about a particular church and it told you about its members, you kind of respect the church for to know its members. It's kind of like that thing, like because that you respect the Bible as a historical document itself because it's how
I
accurate
really
it
don't
is.
because we have no idea. We do not have a single piece of writing from or by the person who wrote it for any single piece in the Bible. We don't have that. We only have copies of 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 things. And we know that people who were totally illiterate copied a lot of those things and made really bad errors from time to time. And people who had theological leanings would just deliberately change or add or delete things to weave a particular narrative.
Yeah, but see, there are there's other ones like the Septuagint, which is
The Greek Old Testament.
right. There's certain documents that are probably the most accurate because you're right. There's so many copies, but
But
there are ways to legitimize which ones are the ones that you know have these egregious errors, have these egregious omissions, and which ones are the most accurate of them, right? Because so it's not like this is just arbitrary. And a lot of people like to do that. Like that's one of a common claim. Like, oh my God, there's so many copies, there's so many things, but the historians, the authorities on the topic, they weed out those mistakes to find the truth, to find the most accurate version of it. So it's not like we don't know what he actually said. You know what I'm saying? It's with anything. And actually, I mean, this is one of the times in history that they have probably one of the most rich kind of a record of documents that can claim the truth. You know what I'm saying? Or these are the most they're pretty accurate. You know what I'm saying? Like this is a time where
no.
books were being made, were being handwritten. Yeah. So, yeah. Like this is a time where, you know, this is not so far back in history where we're guessing a lot. That's basically what I'm trying to say.
Yes, we are.
This is a very
Because we
long.
don't even know what the original Gospels said, because we don't have them. Like, I really doubt that in the original Gospels they wrote about dragons. That just seems silly. But there are all kinds of
Hold on,
things.
wait, stop. That just seems silly. Like that's not a good argument.
Okay,
You don't
we have
understand
no
what I'm saying?
direct evidence that dragons have ever existed, so therefore the idea that they would have wrote about
Okay,
dragons
and are
is
you
silly.
aware? Are you aware that there's a lot of symbolicism in the Bible, both Old Testament and New Testament?
If if it's supposed to be historically accurate, but it uses symbolism, then we've really kind of
Okay, that's
fallen apart here.
but now you're oversimplifying.
Is it
Now
literal history or is it metaphorical history?
it's very distinguishable when you read it when they're talking literal and they're talking about actual people and things that actually happened. Like for example, Paul's shipwreck on Malta. Right, that's a literal thing that happened. He shipwrecked. They talked about how the people were clinging to the wood to wash ashore, and how the people they fed them and clothed them and put them by the fire. Right, like they talked about. Okay, this is a
Yeah,
literal thing.
great.
Now this
Why is this even getting brought up?
Versus you're talking about a chariot that has eyeballs that can see in every direction. Very clearly, that's symbolic, right? And
Do you think
and
that
they make it
dragons
clear.
are real?
No, it never said the dragon is real. It's
Okay,
symbolic.
well,
It
this all started because I said I really doubt that the original Gospels talked about dragons, and you like that seemed to upset you, and I don't understand why we're talking about this.
No, the original gospel didn't talk about dragons. They were talking about Jesus. But I'm saying
So
that
you agree with me?
if you read, because the original gospels are 4 books. It's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, right? But you have the rest of the New
There's a
Testament.
Gospel of Judas. I mean, those aren't about well, yeah. There's a Gospel of Judas. There's a Gospel of Mary. There may be others. Those are the only ones I know off the top of my head.
The gospel of and you verified that this is true. The historian verified that this is true.
It exists. What do you mean
What
it's
what
true?
that these are accurate because see that's the
I
thing.
never said they
The
were
one
accurate. I said they
the
exist.
moment
I don't
listen,
think the four gospels that are in the Bibles are accurate either.
but that's what I'm saying. So listen, that's where your ignorance is showing because
What do you mean? They
because
contain
Bible historian
contradictions. How can they
no,
possibly be accurate?
because the Bible historians, right? They verify the accuracy of each individual scroll that they come across, right? Oh, this one was actually, you know,
They can verify that they're written in a specific time period, but scholars don't scholars don't assess the
yeah,
gospels for the truth of the claims. Just it's just the authenticity of the like the writing itself.
yeah, but there's ways to determine whether this writing is true to unbiasedly, by the way, not just if it's coherent with Christian teachings, but just I mean, in the sense like it agrees with this idea of Jesus, but it's authentic to
Okay.
first century Christians is what I'm trying to say,
Sure.
or whether
Okay.
it's
So
just a
let's say
document that somebody
okay.
conjured up around that time frame. So
Okay, so how do
go
we
go
assess the truthness of the claim that, for example, Jesus resurrected based on the text? How does the text have that ability?
you said sorry, ask the question again. I'm sorry, I was trying to look up this gospel of Mary.
So you were saying something about like scholars verify the accurateness or the accuracy or the truthness of the gospels or whatever. So let's say we have a gospel, it says Jesus resurrected. How do historians or scholars or whatever read that and determine that actually happened?
No, when it comes to that, when it comes to things like that, like Jesus rising again, obviously, we only can rely on the eyewitness account of the people who were there who wrote about it, right? But you know that, like, yeah, how can you know? How can you know? But it's similarly, right? How do we know about any historical battle that took place and kind of get an idea, right? So the thing
Physical
is like,
evidence,
yeah. So right. So for example,
like we
when
found
it comes
Troy.
when it comes to yeah, when it comes exactly, we found Troy. When it comes to like the Mongol Empire and how they destroyed a certain place, how do we know, like what they did or how they did it or whatever, right? How do we actually know? How would we believe it? Well, those same processes, those same like it's not like these people can abandon their academic values. These people have to apply everything that they validify has to go through the same academic process as anything else. So when they say, okay, yo, this is what people saw, or people said they saw, right? It's been verified by multiple, what I'm saying, sources, multiple accounts, right? This is what they said they saw. This is what we must believe because there's no other evidence to support otherwise, right? Then this is what we believe to be somewhat the truth, right? Whether it's believable or not. This is what they said. You know what I'm saying? So it's the same process for anything historical.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway,
To me,
this is not
if you
like
ask me, there's no evidence other than the claims themselves in the Bible, and I don't. To
well
me,
that's
that's not
well
good
that but
enough.
and that's simply not true because there's so much
What?
evidence of
No,
first
there
century
isn't.
Christians. Yes.
What?
So
What are you
like so
talking
like
about?
for example, like that's what I'm trying to say. Like the evidence of Christians being persecuted and Christians spreading the gospel throughout the Roman Empire and up until the part where the Roman Empire started to adopt it. That's been documented so much in the catacombs, right? Like where they used to bury their Christians, right? So like the catacombs are is a,
Okay.
is a, is a clear example of
Today,
that.
interrupt you. Today in America, there are probably 30 million people that think Donald Trump won the election. That doesn't make it true. In fact, we know that it isn't true. So people who never saw Jesus, that believed in the accounts for decades and decades after the supposed events took place, to me is not at all good evidence to support the claims themselves.
No, but what I'm saying is what I'm saying. Miracles aside, you can disbelieve in the miracles aside, right? But the stuff that is believable, right? That's not a miracle. Like this person traveled here, and this person traveled there, and this did that
I mean,
movement. That's
there's
verifiable.
problems with that. There's problems with that too.
No, but there's the thing is like a lot of this stuff is backed by Roman documents also. Like it's not just
No, no, there isn't a single contemporary account of Jesus's
what's
existence
that?
by
Hey, what's
anybody.
that? What's that one Roman dude? It's like it starts with a J. Who wrote about it?
Josephus lived decades after Jesus died.
Yeah, decades. Okay, but that's what I'm trying to say. He wrote about a lot of the Christian activities. He verified it. Like the Christians did never stop just because Jesus died. Okay, Christian history is over. No, there's so much more that's been verified by. You said there's not a single contemporary. You just named the contemporary.
There isn't. Do you know what
So
contemporary means?
Josephus.
Josephus lived decades after Jesus died.
Okay, he was a first century Roman, so that means within the first 400 years after Jesus died. So okay now so the
Yeah,
Bible.
yeah, decades after Jesus died.
So you
That
know
would be
that
like
you know that
me.
Apostle John.
That would be like me writing a story about Winston Churchill. I never knew him, and and the only thing I could possibly ever get my hands on were just people talking about it in the open. The odds that I would say anything accurate about him are like very
Okay,
low.
do you know when the last book of the Bible was written?
It's John, and I don't know off the top of my head, but I think it was after the year like 120.
Okay, I actually thought it was a little bit shorter than that, but I mean, possibly. I think it was like sometime in the 90s, like the 90s, something like that. But you could be right, but basically, but that,
Well, there's a range, so maybe I gave the upper range, you gave the lower range.
yeah. Well, so I mean, Josephus was obviously a young man by the time he says he was born 37 A.D. Right? So for him to verify a lot of the claims and things that happened, um, the things that happen in the Bible. He can, I mean, like that, like that's a contemporary of the Bible. He's a contemporary of the Bible because the Apostle Paul was writing letters to these Christians. He was documenting things that were happening not only politically in Rome and in the Roman Empire at the time, but also things that were happening within the Jewish community, and also things are happening to the Christians. So, like, I mean, I digress. I mean, this is not really something I have to argue. If you did more research, you would kind of see what's been validified and what hasn't been. This is very well documented, very by people who are a lot more knowledgeable than me on the subject. But just do more research, because a lot of the claims you're making about whether
I
things
have
are
done my research, and that's why I make these specific claims.
yeah. Well, I'm saying your claims are just, they're wrong. So I don't really know how you're making
What's one thing that's wrong that I have said?
that the New Testament isn't historically accurate. That's a
It's
claim.
on balance, it's not.
On balance, it is.
Okay, but it just simply isn't. For example, let's see. So Paul converts on his way to Damascus, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Did he go to Jerusalem afterwards or not?
I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Well, because there are contradictory accounts. In Galatians, it says he does not go to Jerusalem. He says in Galatians 1:17, I did not go to Jerusalem. I went to Arabia, then back to Damascus. He went back to Jerusalem 3 years later. But in Acts 9, the very first thing Paul does after converting in Damascus is go directly to Jerusalem.
Okay, so
Those two things can't both be true.
So here's the thing.
So only
So
either
you do
either
realize-
both of them are wrong or one of them is right.
No, so
so
you
it
do-
can't be historical.
Okay, because you do. Hold on, they're both true because you do know that these
No, they're
letters
not both true.
Hold on, wait. These letters, the Galatians, because it starts in Acts. The letters of Apostle Paul, but it starts in Acts, and these letters are to separate congregations, so they're not in chronological order. So when he writes the letter to a Galatians,
Did he convert more than once?
no, he converted once. So okay, you said
Okay, so what did he do after he converted? Did he go to Jerusalem or did he go to Arabia?
She said Galatians what? Galatians 1?
In Galatians 1, he goes to Arabia, and then he goes back to Damascus, and after 3 years, he goes to Jerusalem. But in Acts, he converts and then goes directly to Jerusalem. Those can't both be true. The death of Judas Iscariot, there's like 5 contradictions in that story.
Okay, so someone to Jerusalem. Okay, and then you say, let's see, where does it say? Where does it say the other version? In
Acts 9. Dude, we can't just sit here and read the Bible all day. That's going to be so boring.
I mean, okay, let's talk about.
I mean, another question. What color was Jesus' robe when he was crucified?
I don't know.
Well,
you say
Mark says it was purple. John says it was purple. Luke doesn't. So I'm not sure if Luke says anything, but Matthew says it was scarlet. Was he crucified before or after the Passover meal? Because they give conflicting accounts. What was the last thing what did he say when he was on the cross?
Yeah, it's not conflicting either.
So what did he say when he was on the cross?
He said Abba, Father.
Which means
What does it mean? Like, help me, Father, or something like that?
okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna say what you said. Well, you've said some things about the Gospels which are just flat out wrong, because what he actually says is, Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. So there, you're wrong. See, I did the exact same thing you did.
Wait, where do you say that at? What version are you using? Also,
Luke 23. That's what he says on the cross. Except if you would have said that, I could have just said, actually, that's wrong. What he actually said is, my God, why have you forsaken me? Because that's what Mark tells us he said. But if you'd have said that, I could have just said, actually, that's also wrong, because in John, all he says is, I'm thirsty, he drinks, and then he dies.
Yeah, that's the thing. Jesus
So
up there
did
chatting.
he just did he say all of these things, or
Yeah,
like
we can assume he said all these things. These are four guys, like, different accounts. Some maybe they left. Somebody left before he came, or you know what I'm saying. Like, that's what I'm trying to say. You're trying to validate it, but these are answers are questions that can be answered pretty simply just using logic. You're just a guy.
logic?
Yeah, you're just
Saying
a guy.
my God, why have you forsaken me" is desperately different than saying, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit."
Yeah, I mean, he could have said,
One of them is saying, "Why is this happening to me? You've abandoned me." In the other, he's accepting,
yeah,
and
because
that's because the Gospels are written. There's a lot of overlap, but there are specific parts of them that are written very differently because the authors had different goals
yeah,
in mind.
I wouldn't say different goals, but they had different experiences, right? Like for example, if you had four friends, you guys all go and you guys tell a story about you guys the trip to the Grand Canyon. You guys are all going to give me four different variations of that story of that trip. Different things that stood out to you, different parts of the trip that one person forgot, one person remembered. So it's like, like this is just you guys are all on the same trip. This is the modern day people. Like this is just some old historical story. You guys are giving me four different stories. So it's like this is like that's not really a great argument. Oh my God, they said they wrote different things. Let's trip out about it. Let's trip balls. You can't give the same story with your friends, you know. So I mean,
So
like I
you're
said,
telling me that historical accuracy is when people write conflicting accounts.
okay. So you're telling me that if you would have told me a trip about you and your friends going to and that I can't believe any of your stories is historically accurate because you guys tell me different stories or different there might be differences in your story that's not historically
So
accurate.
you're okay. Sorry, hold on. What you're saying is not at all analogous because a trip to the Grand Canyon is not it's very non-specific, right? But what if four people went to the Grand Canyon and claimed that they all witnessed somebody shout something and then jump over the cliff? And all four people say he said something different. One of them says it happened at a completely different time of the day than the others. One of them says they were wearing completely different clothes than the other person, so on and so forth. Then we would have absolutely no clue which of those stories is the correct version because there are things in them that can't all be true. And since we don't know which one is true, we can't, well, yeah. So since we don't know which one is true, we don't actually know what happened or if any of them are true. Because if that's the case, then to me, the best explanation is all of them are wrong. Well, that might not be the case, but
Yeah, it's not the case. It's
it
not the case.
might not be the case. Look, I'm a teacher, and when a group of kids, when I'm suspicious that they were doing something like ditching class or whatever, and I talk to them one on one, and every single one of them tells me a different story, the most likely thing is that not a single one of them told the story of what actually happened. When you get conflicting accounts, that's usually what it is. Grand Canyon doesn't exist? Damn, I just got debunked.
Yeah, I mean, all these stuff have been argued by guys. This is it's all been argued. I think the Bible on balance. You usually say on balance can't be trusted. I say on balance it can. I mean,